as we've talked about, one heck of a company. Over the years, we've watched you turn JJ into the prodigy he is today. Um, how's that been? How do you feel about training employees from nothing to something or hiring with experience?
Proud, man. I honestly, it's one of my proudest things in business is taking an employee, a young mind, a young individual who's showing interest in our industry and shaping, molding, helping them, find their groove within their career path. That's one of my proudest things. I think in our industry, construction, whether whatever your trade is, plumber, builder, framer, I think the trend is, you tend to be really proud of the projects you do. We do some amazing projects, but compared to developing people within the company and finding their confidence and seeing them find their voice and grow their skill set is 10 times better than the most luxurious project we've done. It's my favorite part. It's honestly my favorite part, just watching people grow and be their best selves, right?
That's awesome. You had JJ as soon as he got started in the industry, right?
I got JJ like a year or two after he started. So JJ started with like a college course, I think a year or 2 years, like this kind of pre-construction course. And he graduated, got a job with, I guess, a contractor, his first job. And he spent, a year and a half just on the other end of a chipping gun, pulling tiles. And you'll have to ask him yourself, maybe on this podcast, but, he was completely discouraged and he asked himself, like, what did I do to end up here? And he questioned, is this where I want to be? And this is where I want to go. And he was almost turned completely off of the entire construction industry. And so we had like low key known each other for maybe a year. We were dating within the same family. So we dated cousins. So we'd see each other like at a, family gathering once or twice a year. And then the cousin he would date would ask my cousin that I was dating, maybe JJ could get a job. I was like, big no. Frankly, I wasn't there, right? Like, I wasn't ready to like take on more employees. I think at the time we were a 3-person crew, and a fourth was like, no, I'm not there, not ready. And this kid, no way. So no, that's jokes. But it did come to a point where I was ready for a fourth person. And I guess the persistence there just, from him through the people we were dating at the time, kind of when I thought of extending my crew, it's like, all right, let's give James Haslam a try. And so, he came in with a year and a half of solid demo under his belt.
Just nonstop demo.
Nonstop.
He could tear some stuff apart, I'm sure.
Oh, can he ever, man? Yeah. So, I'm super proud of him. He was my first apprentice to be enrolled under my name as part of the apprenticeship program here in Canada. And the first graduate, Red Seal carpenter that I put through. So
that's what I was about to ask. You guys have the whole Red Seal program as well, right? It's not just, I don't know, here we don't really have anything like that except for like our unions, but you can get an apprenticeship, and by the time you're done, nobody knows whether or not you really had an apprenticeship or not. You guys have the whole Red Seal thing, they test for it and everything else.
Yeah. Now, here's something you may not have known is carpentry is a non-compulsory, so it's not mandatory to have. It's not law. Unlike here, plumbers, electricians, HVAC,
they have to be.
To run a business and pull a permit, they have to be.
Okay.
So you can go through as an HVAC, never get licensed, but you'll never have your own business.
Oh, wow. So anybody that is a licensed contractor has a Red Seal for whatever trade they're doing.
Yeah. In carpentry, not necessary. So the competition is high, even though we don't need it. But for me, and I think the companies that carry it, it's a great hiring tool, right? We draw some of the most amazing people because that's a draw. They want it, right?
Yeah. Shows they're a little bit dedicated.
It was important for James to have.
Is there a big difference in pay regarding just hiring employees if they have a red seal or not?
No, because it's non-compulsory, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, and if you don't have it, you can be better than a guy with a red seal.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's you know, it's where you were kind of who taught you, right? You could be taught by the best guy who was never licensed, but it doesn't mean like you're a hack. I mean, you could be way better than red seals. I know a lot of guys with red seals that just are no good, but they were good at school and good at tests and right.
Trip out. I've always wondered about that. I've known that red seal is a thing, but I don't know. It just seems like it was kind of like an industry standard. The people that were good had a red seal. So it's kind of cool to hear that clarified.
Yeah. So I use it in my pitches all the time with customers, and it's not that, you know, a lot of times it comes down to price, but it does help in the way that, you know, it shows, I guess, my dedication, the crew's dedication towards our industry. Like we take it serious. We put in the time, we hang a diploma on the wall.
Yeah. You're invested.
We're invested. Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah. Speaking of crew, Jeff, I've followed you for probably a couple of years now. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Harvey Homes and Interiors is the crew, for sure. It's like the first thing, right? But also, like on the other side, like the industry is notoriously known for just terrible employee turnover. Like they just run through people. And I want to understand, and probably for a lot of people listening to this, is how you've been able to grow your crew, treat them well, but even earlier in that, like identifying that early talent, because it's an art to identify early talent and to grow them and develop them and also retain them in your crew. So it's like, how do you even go about identifying that early talent? Because most people in the industry, you know, that's the biggest complaint is finding that next generation talent. They don't want to work. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. But at some point you do, as the company owner, have to take some responsibility for how you're operating your business to retain those people. So I really want to ask you, like from the get-go, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so I don't disagree. I think, you know, there's a lot of onus on the management, the owners, whatever, to retain. That is one of my proudest things as well, aside from developing amazing people, is our low turnover employee rate. It's quite impressive, I think, and I attribute that to the amount of work that we can take on when we're really busy. It's because we're not relying on subcontractors or people who we don't know if they got our back or not. Like this crew, they've all got each other's back. They've all got my back. When I tell a customer we can do something, I know it's going to get done and I don't have that worry. So to recognize, you know, in a young up and comer, if they're going to be that kind of crew member that will join this team and have the team's back, it's a tough one. You know, I think I've got a bit of a vetting process. You know, I use Instagram to hire. I'll advertise. Like my simplest one is I'll put something out on Instagram, some sort of hiring campaign, advertise that we're expanding, and I'll get a load of DMs. You know, let's say on average, if I were to say I was hiring 2 days in a row, I might get 20 to 30 inquiries in the DM. Yeah. And Matt, that's probably one of my most common feedback is, man, I wish I worked for a crew like you. Man, I wish I worked for a guy like you. Man, can I get a job with you? Like that's, you know, you get those DMs every night. That's one of my, that and what happened to JJ Hazy are the two most common.
I believe that one completely. I think that was one of the most devastating things.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, let's just say, you know, you get 25 inquiries. I'll respond.
Are they actually local inquiries, like hireable people?
The majority of them are, I'd say like 80, 90%. We do get a lot of I get a lot of like overseas, hey, I'd love to come, to Canada. Would you sponsor me stuff? I have not done that, but we'll benchmark that note because we're doing something kind of cool currently. And in February, we've got someone coming in from France. So that's kind of
cool.
Way. Yeah. But to finish my thought, I'll reply to all those DMs very similar. Call me, phone number. And out of those 25, maybe 20 of them are local. You know how many are going to call? 50%. 50%. Yeah, I'll get 10. And off a phone call, I mean, you can generally pick up the phone and you can kind of talk to somebody and you can hear maybe their level of confidence. And even if they don't know construction, you can feel their, kind of hear their inner confidence. So out of most of those 10, maybe there'll be a few where I can just say like, well, you're not going to be a good fit for this, or maybe I won't say it to them, but I'll say it to myself. So let's say 7 of those 10, I'll say the same thing. Without burning a bridge, pick a day, come to site, and work with us for a day as a tryout. Very similar to a sport. So if it's a Saturday so that you're not rocking the boat with your current employer, that's great. Don't burn a bridge. Don't lie. Don't tell them. If you got to say a doctor's appointment or something, that's fine. I understand. That's reasonable. But, do not burn a bridge.
And in case it doesn't work out.
Out of those 7, we'll get like 2 or 3 who are like, all right, I'm down.
They actually want to try it.
And they do try it. And then the process is interesting, guys, because, we'll have 2 or 3 guys come to site over the span of 2 weeks, not all at once, separately. And they'll work with us for a day. And, Matt, you've seen a new guy on site and you got your own first impression. But because we're such a tight-knit crew, we talk about that individual once they've left. And, we drive home, we talk to each other every day, like on the drives home, sometimes business, sometimes just shooting the shit. But we'll talk about that individual and we'll compare, and we'll kind of almost make a collective,
it's
decision.
A group effort at that point. It's not just you making the hiring and the firing.
I'm listening to the feedback from James, from Ty, from Molly, from Caleb, from Jake. What do you think? I
mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to is what your crew thinks. Because if they know that they're not going to be a good fit, you're wasting your own time at that point.
Yeah,
I like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So our latest hire, Darun, was a bit different. He was just very persistent, coming through Instagram, but he would come at me like monthly, weekly, daily, and I'd say the same thing. We're not looking for anybody at the time. Check back with me next month. And the guy, I don't know if he set a reminder on his phone, but like he was on top of it. I think at one point I was like, we're going to be getting busy. Check back with me every Thursday. And he did. And so we hired him. He was green, but he just graduated from the college that I now teach at. And George Brown. I sit on the board of directors there for the last couple of years. So, he graduated from that course that, I'm endorsing that school. And I was like, all right, we're going to try this guy. And I didn't really bring it to the team as I normally would have in a hiring campaign, but we brought him on. He tried out. We talked about it. Everyone's like, yeah, he's green. But it's like, yeah, I know he's green, but you were green too. Never mind, everyone. We were all green. And the guy's willingness to learn is like no other. And, he shed that green bark so fast. I mean, he's still green, but it's incredible how he has fit into this team and found his groove. Not as a, yes, he's becoming a good carpenter, but I'm not going to say not as a good carpenter, but as a good team member. So
that's a big thing right there.
Yeah. That unspoken communication where you can look across the floor, you can see Matt looking at a corner, and you're like, all right, this guy needs a brace. And he runs you your brace, Matt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's big. Having a team player, I'd take a team player over somebody with a little bit of experience any day of the week.
So he's a great recent hire.
That's awesome.
Did that answer your question, Brack? I mean,
yeah, it did. It is. And I think a lot of people, they, when they're looking at hiring, they just look at dollar amount. They're not really looking at a collective team effort or how this person can provide value to the entire crew. So I think it's good that, you know, you're coming on the podcast and sharing like, hey, we're doing things a little bit differently, but this is why we're being able to recruit awesome people and then build that collective crew effort.
And you know, there's another part of it about retaining the employee throughout their journey and to build our crew. My intentions as an employer are so far from hiring and firing. I think it's such a typical in our industry.
Yep.
Our industry is so funny, right? Like we stress about schedules so much, but it's like, it's impossible to schedule. It's like make hay while the sun shines and sleep when you can get rest. And I never want to just hire on more employees for a short period of time where we're busy and then go back to not being busy and have to let the weak ones go. So it's, you know, I think there, you know, when looking at expanding the crew, it's really, even though I don't know the individual at that time and I'm only trusting my gut, but it's like looking at that individual coming into the team for the long haul. So they're not coming in to fulfill an order. They're coming in to expand our business.
And themselves at the same time. That's big. I feel like a lot of people do that. I know people here personally that they've had 20 something employees at one point and they're down to 4 or 5 right now. And it's because they got all this work and just brought in anybody and everybody. I guarantee they couldn't even name everybody on their crews. And then every one of them takes off. So they're chasing the money, and you've got a well-developed business that sounds like it runs pretty damn smooth.
You know what I've tried once, Matt? Because maybe 4 years ago, we had too much work, not enough manpower. And it was Emma's suggestion in like office building, corporate settings, it's not unusual to get hired on contract on a 6-month contract,
like a seasonal thing,
where you're walking into, in our industry, we call it seasonal, but when you go to work at whatever, Google, and they're working on a project, trying to launch it, they need to bring guys in. Breck, you can probably attest to this. They'll hire you on a 6-month contract, which means you're going to join this team for 6 months, and there's no guarantee you're going to stay after that. And 6 months is up, no matter how good of a job you did. If they don't need you, they are not obliged to have to keep you. So what I did 4 years ago, Emma suggested, why not? Because I knew I needed to hire 3 people, but I knew I didn't feel I was ready to expand my business by, 3 more annual salaries and everything that comes around with the pressure of like feeding 3 more families, right? So Emma said, why don't you just be transparent and, put a hiring campaign out, but be transparent and say, this is only on contract. This is a 2-month gig. You're on one project. And then when the project's done, you're done. And so it was interesting. I did that. We got 3 people who all agreed to try it out. One individual was getting into construction, so they had nothing to lose as far as, leaving an employment situation, to come onto our crew. So he was down. The other individual was working for a family member renovation kind of scenario. And they were like, I'm going to get serious about this and become an employee of a construction company. And then the other one had a great job. And she said, I'm going to come work for you. And I go, are you burning a bridge? She is Molly, by the way. Are you burning a bridge? She goes, no, I'm chasing an opportunity. So I took the 3 individuals on for 2 months, and it was like work till basically Christmas holidays. Thank you. I owe you nothing as far as coming back in the new year. In those 2 months, we met Molly, we met Jake, aka Diesel, and this other individual who we used exactly what we intended for that 2-month contract. Jake and Molly made such an impression that, I was saying to them, I said, these are the people, if I'm ready to expand my business, these are the people I need. And so she's like, well, figure out how to make it happen. And so I took them on in the winter, and in Toronto, generally things can slow down in construction. And we ramped up to grow our business. so that I didn't lose the opportunity of working with these two individuals who are still with us and like major attributes to what makes this team so amazing. So that was a fun one.
That's interesting though. I mean, I've never heard of anybody doing like a 2-month, 3-month contract in the construction industry. I'm sure it happens with like commercial stuff, but that's pretty rad. I mean, you get to try them out. You have no obligation to keep them. And then you kind of get to see how they fit. And like you said, 2 out of 3 hit. That's pretty impressive. How long ago was that? It was 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think 4 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
5. Yeah.
How many employees do you have right now?
Right now there's 11 of us.
Dang.
Yeah.
So any employees. Any plans for expansion in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like we run a great with 11. I'm 11. It's 2 3s and a 4, right? As far as crew sizes. So 12, we had 12 right before the holidays, but coming into the winter, I wasn't, sure. And the 12th was a floater. So although he was employed, he was an HVAC guy going through his HVAC apprenticeship. And due to COVID, his employment situation dried up because I guess, they were working commercial restaurants and stuff. So he lost his job. So he jumped on as a temp, knows construction, not a framer, but an 4th year HVAC guy.
Yeah.
He knows tools. He knows the job site and was great. So as 12, it was fantastic. And, I'd love to get to 12, but not in the winter. So we'll probably get up there, this summer will be 12 again. For sure. It was good. It was perfect. 3 4s,
you've got enough. You've got enough people to do anything you need to with 4. We built some pretty cool stuff with 4 people. It doesn't take. That's a big misconception. People think that you need 10 people on a single crew. I see people on social media and they've got 10 people framing a 1,800 square foot house, and I'm like, man, you guys either make a killing or you're losing it. But I don't know. I think 3 to 4 is a perfect crew size.
Yeah, I think 4 is the best.
We talked about this a bit earlier. George Brown College, you said you're on the board of directors. It's motivating to see people like yourself participating and investing your time and energy into that next generation workforce. Tell us a little bit about what you got going there. It looks like a pretty awesome program.
Yeah, so I sit on the board of directors. So what that looks like is before COVID, getting together 3 times a year and basically talking at a board table. There's myself, a few other contractors, talking to the dean, the professors of the various courses that go into those pre-construction courses, telling them what we expect to have out of a graduate. So what are we looking for, right? As construction employers. So just, they take our feedback, they tweak their courses to try and better, prepare their graduates for the workforce. So, that whole thing spawned off using social media and Instagram. That's what initially did that networking. And then, just stayed in contact. Last year I was invited to apply for a teaching gig, but I got married and had a pretty kick-ass honeymoon, which would have had me miss 3 classes. So we decided it wasn't a great time last year. And this January came along and I was reapproached and I jumped on the opportunity. So I'm teaching carpentry shop class first year.
Heck yeah.
There you go, man.
They've got one good teacher. How is it working with kids like that? Good majority of them seem like they're actually into it?
Yeah, I'd say so. We're due to COVID, we're class sizes no bigger than 10. So we had 9 students yesterday. We're building a shed. So, groups of 2, doing the social distancing thing. It's fun. I mean, day one, I'll say the first day of school nerves don't go away and don't change regardless if you're a teacher or a student. Because I was pretty nervous, man. But, it was humbling because we're starting this project, and day one, I'm the shop teacher. They've been taught the theory of what they're going to be doing in shop. So day one was to set up their their sill plates, their mud sills, and kind of start a little, little floor system, little 8x8 floor system, right?
That's awesome.
But throughout the introduction, we do a little shop intro, COVID protocol stuff, and before we jump into it, I just had this feeling, and I was like, just ask it, Jeff. It's better to know. And I was like, who here? We had 6 students. Who here has used a circular saw before? And I had one guy put his hand up and kind of do that like kinda motion with his hand. I was like, kind of use a circular saw. I'm like, all right, we're gonna walk through the circular saw, guys, and it was cool, like just holding the circular saw, going through the parts, the table, the toe, the heel, the guard, the depth, the handle, the trigger, the second handle, the cord. So it was humbling and it was fun. And cool part about that, out of like 5.5 individuals, I helped them make their first cuts, right? Like that was a cool thing.
That's awesome, man.
It was a small class. So we literally, went through kind of this little teaching thing I had in my head, and we worked out the saw, and I made some cuts to show them what we expect. And we went through one by one, making their first cut. So everyone would watch them. I'd critique them, tell, okay, see what he did wrong here. So the next guy would kind of touch on that. And it was fun. So now we've got a little thing, Matt, and you'll appreciate this, because in carpentry, the only way you're going to get better and more confident is repetitiveness.
Yeah.
You're only going to learn how to cut when you cut. You're only going to learn how to bang a nail is when you swing your hammer. So
exactly,
we're working on this project. So when I go in, rather than let's jump into it, grab a piece of wood, the scraps that are around like 4 or 5 feet, and I'll write down 6 or 7 measurements. So right there, boom, and they're making 6 or 7 cuts right at day one. Let's do it. So I, space out the blocks, 48 1/4, 42 3/8, 36 7/8, and it's just like choo, 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 and it's awesome.
The more they do it, the more it'll be muscle memory, and by the time they're done, they'll be set. Now, I've worked with students before, and it's an awesome feeling, because as a carpenter, we kind of forget the things that we've learned over the years. Little things like 3, 4, 5, for instance. You show that to a kid and they lose it. You could see the sparks going off in their head. They just learned something that they never knew before. And while you and I might forget it, or not necessarily forget it, but not think of it as anything special, that's mind-blowing to them. That's cool though. Being able to make their first cuts, being trusted with a saw is huge. And
that's where that expression
actually
comes
knows
from,
what
right?
they're doing. That's huge.
That expression, I forgot more than you'll ever know. That's where that one comes from.
Yeah.
To see an individual hold a skill saw for their first time, hit the trigger, and see it
that
kind of
torque
on them, but you see it in their eyes, like, oh, this tool is not to be messed around with. And it's like, yeah, these are powerful, man.
Yeah.
So
no, they have to be taken serious.
Yeah, and I try to relate and try and offer that real world stuff, and we have fun. I ask if I can put them on Instagram, so I'm doing the posts with them. And
I've been seeing that's what I was going to bring up. I've been seeing the posts about what they're building, and that right there is going to build so much pride. They're going to be so proud of what they're doing that they'll strive in the industry.
Yeah, I'm learning the reels there on Instagram, so I'm going to practice in the class on.
There you go.
My reels game, yeah.
No, that's awesome. They're getting that early recognition that their work is paying off, and that's good. Because typically, when I went out to Iowa, some of the shop teachers, like, they weren't very supportive of, obviously, phones being in the shop class. You shouldn't be messing around with them anyways. But the fact that you're able to go in there and give them some recognition for their work or take photos with them, it's just showing the value that you're bringing to the classroom.
Yeah, and it is a strict policy, when the prof is telling me how to conduct the class, but we go on a 15-minute break halfway through the class, and when we come back in, before we jump back into it, we do another like 6 or 7 cuts. But before we jump into that, I go, you guys want to take pictures of what we're doing? I'm going to do a post, and that's when we'll have that time, right? Because no one's on the tools, and it's like, I'm going to do a post, so if you guys want to take pictures, go for it. And I've seen a couple of the individuals post on their social media. So it's cool to see that, right? They're tagging me. they're a student, and
Yep.
yeah, it's like there's always that time, right? And take that picture.
Yeah, be proud of the work you do.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Jeff, before we jump into our Fast Five and wrap up, I want to see if it's possible to get a punchline from you. You're kind of known for building an awesome team over there in Toronto, and we want to see if we can get a punchline from you on what's the biggest difference between the Harvey crew and the thousands of other crews.
What's the biggest? That's a loaded question. What's the difference? Without being offensive?
You can be offensive.
Yeah.
Matt's the co-host, so
Matt doesn't like to stir the pot. Yeah. What's the difference between us and everyone else? I'd say we're a team, man. And, frankly, I'd probably stress more about our team than I do our customers. And I know the customers feed the team, but that's the mentality, but it's not true. Our team feeds the customers. The customers have a product. They got to build a house. They got to sell it. They need our team to do that. And they choose our team to do that. So our team goes number one.
If your team wasn't on their A game, you're not putting out the good stuff.
No. So, I tell the team, we work for ourselves. We don't work for them.